Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Wednesday, February 15th, 2017 edition of VR News. Haven't used the expression metric crap ton for quite a while, but guys, tonight is probably one of those nights. Tons of games. I'm going to say it, a metric crap ton of VR content tonight. One game in particular, and this is strictly my speculation and my opinion, has the potential to be the best virtual reality horror game yet released. And absolutely, when I say yet released, I mean all platforms, yes, even including Resident Evil 7. I could be completely off my rocker on this. We're going to look at it in a couple of minutes, and I'll be really interested in hearing what your guys' thoughts are on that, because to me, it looks exactly like what I would want out of a horror game. But let's not start with that game. Let's start with another game called Sky Sanctuary. Sky Sanctuary is a very colorful looking samurai training simulator / game. So you are an aspiring samurai. You're in training. You've got a guide tutor narrating the experience on this fictional island. And you have a robot AI unit that basically accompanies you throughout the experience. This is basically going to be a Vive game, currently looking at early access. All right, next up, Eve Valkyrie. Now, Eve Valkyrie is a game I play. I prefer the simulation style of Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, that type of game a bit more, but there are times, obviously, I've got the arcade there, where I just want to jump in and have arcade action. If you're looking for a cockpit VR game that has exactly that, arcade-style action, that is what Eve Valkyrie delivers on. Yes, it can seem a little simplified at times, but they've made huge improvements on the enemy AI, and this latest update, it's called the Wormholes update, looks to deliver quite a bit. You get a whole new mode to gameplay, which is basically a league system. So you've got all kinds of different scoring now, and competitive rankings via that. Fixes, improvements, those are the things that you would expect. New combat scenarios, and I really like this last one, the ability to travel into anomalies, which basically change the rule set entirely. As over tea kettle, changing fundamentally how the rules of combat and engagement play out in Eve. So it's definitely piqued my interest. Haven't played the game in probably a couple of months, which I know has been a while, but with this latest update, definitely going to take another peek. Now, this next game, Raiders of Erda, what caught my eye was the co-op questing. On the surface, it looks very much like a Vanishing Realms type game. It looks like it's going to be an RPG light, probably roguelike elements to it. And that in itself is pretty damn appealing. But what I like the most, guys, and it's kind of tying it in, not only does it look like Vanishing Realms, it was during a Vanishing Realms quick look that I talked about the potential for virtual reality combat, or better put, combat in virtual reality games / experiences. And what I meant by that at the time was, look, when you've got 2D combat games, let's pick Street Fighter 2. Which was huge in the arcades, huge on the SNES. It had set frames of animation. Any given character, Honda, Ken, you name it, you have a set amount of moves. It really just boiled down to using one of those moves at the right time. Timing is critical in that game. Fast forward, you've got polygon-based games like Soul Calibur. You've got more animation for combat, more moves that you can employ, but you're still limited by the technology. It's still all about set frames of animation. With virtual reality, that all goes out the frickin' window. You have the ability to swing that sword in any way that your imagination sees fit. If 9 out of 10 ways are absolute complete gimp, you're going to die, and you're going to die a lot. But you're going to die in all kinds of cool and goofy ways that only you could make happen by swinging your sword. And that is the beauty of combat. The potential for me is if you build a really good AI in virtual reality for combat, and you make really tight, like if you can master, or just hell, don't even have to master, get really good at isolating hitboxes. And what I mean by that is in video games, there's certain areas on the graphic of an object that determine, look, if another object of this type touches here, it does damage. Usually that's explosions if you're playing a game like R-Type, for example. If you're playing a combat game, it might mean, okay, look, if you hit his right arm, he can't use his right arm, etc. Well, if you can tighten that up in VR, you're really just limited by the potential of the person playing it. They get to dictate the terms. You've made the AI. They're actually living the combat, and we haven't even begun to tap into that. But it's coming, and damn, is it exciting. I can't wait. This Raiders of Erda, definitely a step in that direction. It's got co-op modes available. Again, looks very much like Vanishing Realms on the surface, but gameplay-wise, it takes the combat further than a lot of other games have done to date. All right, let's talk about the game that I was talking about at the beginning. This game is called Syren. Syren. It's a play on the sea sirens, the ones that would sing sweet songs and lure Greek sailors to their death, right? This game, check out the trailer. Just watch the trailer. It looks absolutely stunning. Gorgeous graphics. The reviewer of the game, or rather the author of the article, basically said that, look, if you thought Resident Evil 7 was scary, you haven't seen anything yet. This game takes the cake. And just in a summary, just a quick summary, what it's about essentially is humans have encountered and found these mythical sirens in the wild. We've rounded them up, because that's what humans do really well, and performed all kinds of nasty experiments on them for many years. Horrible, cruel experiments that benefited us for medicine and all kinds of other stuff. Then they escape. And when they escape, they're not interested in signing peace treaties. They want us dead. And you find yourself in the unfortunate position of exploring one of these underwater sea bases where they've escaped and they want revenge. So it just looks absolutely stunning. The graphics are great, but the gameplay, just in the trailer, if that, and I really hope it is, not just some kind of smoke and mirrors trick, but if it truly represents the gameplay, I do think it has the potential to be the best horror game in VR to date. So super stoked about that. I checked today. They haven't gotten final approval. It was supposed to launch today. They said it could happen basically any hour, any day. So I'm going to keep tabs on this. As soon as it's done, there's going to be a video on this. Even though I'm still editing the John Wick one, which is giving me no end of trouble, this one will be done as well. All right, on to the news and realistic architectural uses for virtual reality. We've touched on that in a couple of different ways. We touched on it in terms of the consumer being able to do more with a prospective house or townhouse or condo than simply the 360 graphic, right? Where you hit your pivot points. There are modifications being worked on that will allow you to literally walk room space wise throughout your prospective new home. Something that to date you've never been able to do on multiple listing services for real estate, etc. What these guys from a company called Overdose Caffeine has done, or have done rather, is they've worked their software and the hardware in such a way that they can pretty much take any layout, whether it's a condo, townhouse, house, with eerie realistic lighting. Like the end result looks absolutely fantastic. And these guys are out of Turkey. Hadn't heard about them. They throw the term hyper-realistic around, but for these guys, it actually it actually applies. Take a look at the video below. This would be amazing. I would love to see this on multiple listing services globally. My wife and I, we are looking at possibly moving to the East Coast at some point in the future. And to have that ability to check out real estate in a hyper-realistic way, like what Overdose Caffeine is working on, that sounds super appealing. So I'm going to keep tabs on this and definitely report more as it becomes available and they update. Next up, Lytro. We've talked about these guys in the past. These guys are literally funding darlings. They've been able to just round up a hell of a lot of investment money. They have finished another round of investments, $60 million additional. When I talk about not being worried that VR is, the doom and gloom that it's going to die within the next couple of months, it can't, simply due to the fact that there is so much investment money tied up. And we haven't even begun to tap into those. There's enough, coal in the fire, so to speak, to fuel this for the next 2-3 years, even if the hardware sales continue to be slow. Now, obviously, it's in everyone's benefit that it picks up, but if it picks up, but not quite as aggressive, it could still work, is what I'm trying to say. So very interesting. These guys, won't go into crazy details because we've looked at them before. Link below if you don't remember or want to dig into it a little bit deeper. But yeah, that's the company Lytro. And they also expect that their first content is going to become available in the second quarter of this year. Let's talk about IMAX again. We kind of changed, or rather they changed the game plan. So originally it was going to be IMAX VR experiences wherever there was IMAX, right? They would pick locations. That got changed a little bit a couple of weeks ago, and they announced that they were going to deliver specifically to pilot locations initially. And the first one was going to be Los Angeles. And that's all this news piece is just an update on that, with actual screenshots of what the facility will look like. We've heard them talk about it. We've heard them, go on and on about what they're going to offer and how it's going to look, but we never actually got to see how it's going to look. Hopefully with these pictures, and one of them looks like it's a rendered picture. That's the cubicle or the actual VR space, but apparently that is indicative of the final product. So I probably got these pictures up right now, but looking at them as a whole, you get an idea, even sequentially, how that experience is going to play out in LA and ultimately possibly in other locations. But the nature of pilot testing is you're going to be able to course correct. So if they find issues in days or weeks, they're going to be able to make alterations. So ultimately what ends up at, say, my IMAX here in my theater might be completely different than what you see in these screenshots, but that is their first kind of stab at it. Next news piece, HTC. They haven't given specifics, but they've dropped some pretty good language that they are in fact going to be looking at mobile solutions. What I mean by that is some of their quotes. So what they've said here is, with regards to their planning, that they have a good plan in terms of combining mobility with VR in the coming months. And it's that phrase that the author from Upload VR was kind of hung up on, and I agree. It's a little mysterious. It's a little cryptic because the phrase combining mobility with VR, what does that mean? And the author speculates a couple of possibilities. The first is their own mobile stab at things, kind of like a Gear VR or a Google Daydream, or it's modification to their existing kit. In other words, if you have the Vive kit already, this is kind of like an upgrade. Think of it like a TP Cast where it introduces wireless. Well, with this kit, you may have the ability to extend virtual reality from the HTC Vive base unit to your phone. that has me really intrigued. That would be so cool if that is in fact, and if you're asking me which of those two I like better, yeah, that last one. That has the potential, especially if you can use it with pretty much any phone. If they really stick to what they've been doing, which is fairly open, at least compared to others, and they make it say like a general Android app, that would be freaking cool. Providing the phone has the specifications, right? It's able to deliver technologically, then that would be awesome. Have it open to all Android phones. No word on the when. Hopefully over the next few months, and as trade shows pop up, we get more details on that. Now, about 3 times the last 2 weeks, I've talked or referenced the briefing that Gabe Newell and some key Valve employees gave. That was the one where they announced the 3 VR games that they're working on, etc. I found the actual video for that from Valve or one of their YouTube channels. And it's really interesting. It's about 37 minutes long. If it's at all of any interest to you, I strongly recommend watching it. And I made note that at 22 minutes, 48 seconds to about the 28-minute mark, so 22 and a half minutes in to roughly a half hour, okay, Gabe, has one of his engineers to his right show the new base stations. And you can see the size difference. It literally looks about half the size of the existing base stations. And of course, that design has the 1 motor and laser as opposed to the 2 doing the diagonal sweep. And he mentioned specifically, not only is it smaller, lighter, more cost-effective, but the footprint and the ability to merge it into the existing technology is all seamless. So you could literally swap out just one if you had to. It doesn't need to be both units. Now I'm going to confirm that. That was the gist of what I got out of it. Perhaps, and there should be no reason why that wouldn't work, but there is a chance, of course, that you got to replace both, right? Software can do a lot of things. It may not be able to do that, but my understanding is that's exactly what it's going to do. Last news story, Void upgrades. Now, Void is the company and technology behind the Madame Tussauds New York Ghostbusters experience. And the first time around, they were apparently using DK2, so Rift DK2s. They haven't said or confirmed, but speculation is with the new units that they're coming out with, that they are now based on the Rift commercial, albeit tweaked. What's good about this article is that it went into some detail on some things. Now, this was an experience that I had tested out when I was in New York. I thought it was a little overpriced, but it was a really cool, immersive experience. And what I liked most about it is the fact that you weren't tethered. That was huge. Well, now we find out that they were actually using the OptiTrack tracking system. So they weren't using Rift sensors. They were using a completely different proprietary tracking system, not designed specifically for Rift when they did that. And for the next rollouts, and they've got many installations, they're looking to open in different facilities as well worldwide with this newer version. And the last piece of the puzzle, and I never touched on this when I was in New York, but the faceplates are removable, so you're not getting somebody else's sweat. And hopefully I'm not grossing anybody out for dinner with more sweat talk, but yeah, that is not a concern. It literally comes out, and it's more of a helmet anyways, so hidden inside of that is probably, the commercial Rift, but the faceplate, all of that stuff, interchangeable. So yeah, you get a fresh one at the beginning of the experience. All right, guys, that is it for the news today. I'm really stoked about that game, Syren. Hopefully it's as fun and good as it looks on the video. Looks can be deceiving. We're just going to have to try it. If one of you happens to get to it before I do, please post your findings on this video. That would be awesome. All right, guys, as always, cheers.